Jeszcze Stongo, Gary Fife, Joho Jifkados, Mvskoke Radio, Mabo Hedjidowetskis. Welcome to our program. We appreciate you taking time out of your morning to join us on this beautiful Okmulgee day. A couple of things we'll be sharing today. First of all, we'll be talking to some staff members from the Department of Interior's Arts and Crafts Board. There have been some busts out in the Southwest of people who have been importing and selling fake Indian jewelry, and their work to stop that particular group, and an idea and a feel for how big that problem really is. In the second portion of our program, it's coming up to graduation and prom nights for many of our local students, a lot of Mvskoke kids. Congratulations on making it. But some of them aren't fully prepared formally, so to speak, to attend those events. And we've got a couple folks in here to talk about a donation effort to help some of those young people with their prom dresses and formal wear. But first of all, let's get on with it and talk with our folks in Washington, D.C. Good morning, Mr. Vanway. Are you with us?
Yes, good morning.
Hi, this is Ken Vanway, and let me get your title and a formal job attachment there.
Okay, I am a program specialist with the Indian Arts and Crafts Board.
And that is an extremely important position to help govern and protect the Native American artisans around the nation. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, no, I'm not necessarily one to promote my own importance, but certainly the board is important, and I value my work here. Do you want me to talk a little bit about the board?
Yeah, a lot of people have probably heard of it, but may not be fully aware of what it actually does.
Okay, the Indian Arts and Crafts Board was established in 1935, and we work to promote economic development of American Indians and Alaska Natives through expansion of the Indian arts and crafts market and through enforcement of the Indian Arts and Crafts Act, which is a law that requires that arts and crafts products sold in the United States as Indian-made or an Indian product are actually made or produced by Indians as defined by the Act. The board also operates the Southern Plains Indian Museum in Anadarko, as well as a museum in Rapid City, South Dakota, and a museum in Browning, Montana.
Okay. Will you have any connection with the proposed American Indian Cultural Center in Oklahoma City?
We do not.
Okay, well, we'll wait for them to open their doors finally. But the reason we were interested in chatting with you today is we had taken notice of a major bust of some fakes out in the Southwest. Some people out there were importing arts and crafts, quote unquote, from the Philippines and trying to pass them off as Indian. So let's start there, and maybe you could tell me about that.
Okay, I can't go into a lot of detail with that because that is an ongoing operation with some actions forthcoming. But I can say that there were some guilty pleas in October of 2017 and sentencing in 2018 for two individuals who had been involved with that, importing, as you said, arts and craft, or importing jewelry from the Philippines that were then resold as Native American made.
Now, we've noticed this problem emanating from the Philippines, and a couple of things in the past over the last few years. We've noticed that pop up several times. One thing that does come to mind was Alaska Native arts and crafts that were being imported and sold in the Seattle area, and their fake artists were trying to use a name that sounded familiar to Alaska Natives, but it wasn't, and it turns out they were not. And That was a major bust, so to speak. Now, maybe we can talk a bit about how important this industry is to Native American artisans. What kind of information can you share?
Okay, well, we believe that the Indian arts and crafts industry is very important to communities and to individuals, and certainly that the imported pieces or misrepresented pieces here in the United States, whether they're domestically or foreign produced, do undercut the livelihoods of artists and communities. The general estimate, which we're confident in but can't necessarily back up with hard numbers, is that the value of the Indian arts and crafts industry is over $1 billion a year total.
Oh, my, that's a lot of silver and turquoise there. Now, it seems to me that most of the stories I've heard about this issue, this topic, have been generally focused in the Southwest. And, although I joke about the silver and turquoise, that seems to be the target. They want to copy the work of the Dene and Pueblo and all the other tribes in that area. Has this been the case? I mean, have you seen numbers that kind of point to
that? So the board itself has been involved in a lot of cases. And there are things that have occurred. A lot of things do happen in the American Southwest, and certainly that seems to be a consumer focus. So consequently, a lot of the crime is focused on where the money is or where the money is perceived to be. But we have been involved with cases in Alaska. We have been involved in cases in Missouri and Oklahoma. And we've even been involved recently in a case in Alabama involving Mvskoke shell carvings.
Oh, gosh. I have a distant cousin that does that, and he mentioned that he'd been seeing some fakes coming out on the market. Now, let me perhaps focus a minute or two here on the domestic problem.
Okay.
We have seen over the years Indian arts and crafts exhibitions kind of tighten their rules on who can and who can't be part of their programs. Here in Oklahoma, they've enacted state law restricting those activities to members of federally recognized tribes. But I remember, I've wandered through some of the larger shows around the nation, and you look at somebody back there behind the counter, and just for the life of me, you look at them and say, wait a minute, that's not quite the concept of Indian that I'm used to. And, be it the case where I've been horribly wrong in the past, but that had seemed to pop up a lot. People were kind of coming up with a lot of Cherokee connections and other things like that. Now, have you all looked at and made any focus on the domestic production problems?
We have had several cases that have involved domestic production. We had a 2013 case against jeweler Andrew Red Horse Alvarez, who had been selling his jewelry at a lot of very nice high-end shows as Colville and Apache. And he was sentenced in 2013 for selling that work as Indian-made when it wasn't.
Mm.
We had a conviction in 2015 with a gentleman, Terry Lee Whetstone, who had used a fraudulent Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma ID card to get into several art shows, including the Cherokee Nation Market. He was a flutist, performer, sculptor. He pled guilty in 2015 in Missouri, and was sentenced to 3 years of probation on that. So we have focused on some domestic production.
Now, you mentioned the flutist there. I hadn't really thought about that too much. There have been performers out there who label themselves as natives, but obviously weren't. But is that a big part of your focus, or is it primarily
No.
business? Yeah.
The Arts and Crafts Act specifically applies to art and craft products.
Mm-hmm.
So performers, storytellers, musicians fall outside of the act.
Yeah, well, good. I'm glad.
Those things are not covered.
Right. Well, thank you for clearing up that and making that distinction for me.
Right, but it is not uncommon, not to interrupt here, but I want to make sure that I get the point across. It is not uncommon for somebody to be doing both.
Yeah.
So just because they're a storyteller or a musician doesn't mean that they're not doing the other.
Right. And
it's just
it's common
which part of their behavior is covered by the act.
Now, we have obviously been looking at the Southwest, and when I think of some of the major shows, that usually the Santa Fe activities come to mind. And I've been down there and seen incredible work of the local folks down there. Made some purchases, the little ones, that from those artisans on the governor's porch there. That's the kind of thing that comes to mind. So it would seem like it would be quite a draw for folks who are maybe looking into getting their fake stuff in there and conning tourists who really don't know any better. Has that been the case, or are those shows down there, the big name ones, pretty stringent about who participates?
Oh, it depends on the show. That certainly SWIA, which is the organization that puts on the Santa Fe Indian Market, are very careful about who they allow into their show. Pardon me. And they're fairly strict about what is allowed to be sold in the booths there. But there are also ancillary shows and things that happen in Santa Fe at the time of Indian Market that people think are part of Indian Market but aren't.
Mm-hmm. I understand that then would be a prime target, as you say. Any idea of dollar figures?
Not for that. Hard numbers are very hard to come by in this field.
Yeah, a lot of it is neighbor to neighbor kind of thing. Things that are done on like a personal basis and things and stuff like
right.
that. Have other shows around the nation contacted you for assistance or perhaps some sort of investigative effort to come look at some of the things that might be targeted toward them?
Yeah, we're occasionally we work with a few shows. We're always glad to work with anybody who has questions or a problem with a potential artist, and we're always glad to take a look at questions of whether somebody is really enrolled or not, whether somebody is who they say they are, or whether the work that's being produced and sold is actually being sold as what it is.
Now, what would take place in one of those investigations?
Oh, So the Indian Arts and Crafts Board does not actually have any direct law enforcement authority.
Mm-hmm.
So we work very closely with Fish and Wildlife Service.
All right. Yeah.
Who do a lot of our investigations and handle the law enforcement end of our activities. But certainly, in a typical case where somebody has a question, they would contact us. They believe that somebody who has been selling at their show is not who they say they are. We would contact the tribe to determine whether or not they were enrolled. If there was an issue with whether or not their jewelry was actually made by them, for instance, we would take a look at that, and then if there does seem to be a problem, we would refer that on for law enforcement.
All right.
But the board serves sort of a combination screening and educational role.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. Now, have you been more active in the last few years?
I don't know that we have been more active in the last few years, but I would say that we have been more successful in the last few years.
Yay.
And everybody likes success.
Mm-hmm. I know that there have been cases where there have been conflicts of somebody trying to get into a show and their restrictions or perhaps something else has prevented them, and they get rather angry and upset and stomp off. Now, here in Oklahoma, there has been a state law passed that limits representations to members of federally recognized tribes, and they must prove it too. The one I'm thinking of happens around here up in Glenpool, Oklahoma. It kind of kicks off the season, and I asked them about that once, and they said, "Well, now that the laws are really being enforced, and there are some backups now that they might have seen a decrease in the problem, but there are still unexpected results like." People filing lawsuits saying, I've always sold this as an Indian, and although my tribe isn't on the list, that doesn't make me any less Indian, kind of thing. Do you run into those kind of legalities or the fine line kind of thing?
Occasionally. There are certainly questions that come up over, so the Federal Act says that state-recognized tribes meet the Act's definition of Indian, but then the question arises occasionally as to whether a group has really legally been recognized by a state. And that will sometimes become a more involved question and answer and back and forth with the state government. But overall, people are either meet a definition or don't from our perspective. And certainly, as the state has their law, too, it's fairly clearly defined, so... Sorry, I'm blanking out there. Yeah, so I'm just not sure. We ourselves have not been involved in very much litigation or anything on that.
Okay.
That our definitions have been fairly clear since the 90s.
We are aware there have been a couple of situations, one here in Oklahoma and then somewhere else, that some of the artists who are part of a show have pointed out the fakes and said, "Hey, wait a minute! Don't buy anything from this guy because he's lying. He's not even Indian, or he just made up this tribe and is trying to pull off a fast one here." Kind of a grassroots movement from the artisans themselves and other tribal members and their families. Has any of that risen up to your level? Are you aware of that? Do you take tips or leads from that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. If people have concerns about an artist or a business or something that they believe is in violation of the Indian Arts and Crafts Act, they can contact us toll-free at 888-ART-FAKE or 888-278-3253. They can email us. They can contact us by mail. Our address is available through our website at www.doi.gov/IACB, and we are glad to take a look at anything.
Okay.
So that's a potential violation of the Arts and Crafts Act.
Right, and that process wouldn't be an instant kind of thing. You'd have to do a little research or perhaps other things like that.
Oh, nothing is ever easy.
Mm-hmm.
But we are certainly always glad to take a look, and if we do consider something to be a potential violation, we will either contact the seller to work to bring them into compliance with the Act, or failing that, pass it on to law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Any idea what that track record might be like? How many have been ousted from this particular field, this discipline, conned men getting kicked out or even arrested, like these two gentlemen in Mexico?
At this point, there have been 10 criminal convictions under the Act. There have been, I believe, around, last time I checked, and I need to update this, but the last time I updated this in September, we had 24 indictments under the Arts and Crafts Act. And a lot of people do, once they get contacted by the board, do shape up too. That if somebody is doing something, it's a violation of the law, but it doesn't necessarily rise to the level where someone is going to prosecute it. We're often able to inform the seller about what they're doing, how it is a violation of the law, and get them to come into compliance.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's so good to hear. I'm delighted to hear that success. Now, do you have that the quote law unquote handy there, and could you perhaps read a section or two to kind of give our listeners an idea of what specific kinds of things we're talking about here?
Sure. Well, I can paraphrase it. Again, if people want to go to our website, there is a link to the various. So there's the 1990 Act was amended in 2000 and then amended again in 2010. So rather than quoting from the particular laws that were passed, there's sort of an aggregate in the United States Code, and we have a link to reach that on our website. But basically, the Act prohibits the offer or display for sale or sale of any art or craft product in a manner that falsely suggests it is American Indian or Alaska Native made. Our definition under the Act is that somebody needs to be an enrolled member of a federally recognized Indian tribe or an Alaska Native village, or however things are defined under the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. They can be an enrolled member of an officially state-recognized tribe, which would be a tribe that has been recognized by a state with the force of law, as opposed to a variety of other ways that states have said nice things about groups without actually giving them any legal recognition. And somebody who is a descendant of a tribe but not enrolled can be certified by a tribe of their descent as a non-member Indian artisan. So there are criminal penalties to the Act, fines for individuals of up to $1 million a year, or imprisonment not to exceed 15 years, and fines of up to $1 million for corporations. Oh, I guess it's up to $250,000 for the first offense, and then subsequent convictions would be up to $1 million for an individual.
Okay, well, it's nice to hear that kind of enforcement ability. And in other words, teeth are in that law then, right? Right.
And individual tribes, Indian arts and crafts organizations, and Indian artists can also bring civil suits under the Act without the direct involvement of the board at all.
All right. Now, we're going to have to wrap this up here in a little bit.
Okay.
If there, maybe you could share some ideas, or are there signs that point to a fake that people should be aware of if they're interested in making purchases? I mean, something to look out for, perhaps?
Oh, I guess the one thing that I tell people to look out for would be seeing a whole lot of the same thing. That if you're going into several stores and you're seeing the same ring or the same bracelet or the same pot, and they're all allegedly handmade by a particular person, at some point either the volume of what there is or the identical nature of the production could possibly be a tell. That for consumers, we certainly recommend that you learn a little bit about what it is that you're looking to buy, that you get a written guarantee of what it is that you're purchasing. If somebody says that it's sterling silver, or says that it's made by a particular artist or a particular tribe, that you get all of that in writing, so that if you do come to find that there is a problem later, you have some sort of redress, or you have some sort of evidence to provide, because it is a lot easier to pursue a case where you have evidence than it is to pursue when you have no evidence.
Okay, so if you come up to a vendor and they've got, let's say 25 bear necklaces all alike, then you might want to ask somebody.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Mr. Vanway, if someone was interested in obtaining more information and speaking with someone there at the board, how do they get in touch with you?
Okay. Again, we have a toll-free number, 888-ART-FAKE or 888-278-3253. They can contact us through our website, through a web link. And forgive me, the shutdown has made me forget what my actual... So...
It's probably happened to a lot of Americans.
Yeah, we have an email. You can find the link through our website, but I can't actually remember what our direct email is right now.
Okay.
I also want to mention before I go that we do have an exhibit up at our Southern Plains Indian Museum in Anadarko, Oklahoma, that features some of the pieces from various Indian Arts and Crafts Act cases.
Oh, right. That sounds like fun. All right. Well, Ken Vanway, thank you again. We appreciate it. We'll let you get back to catching up with the rest of the government there, and certainly do appreciate the information you've shared with us today.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been good talking to you.
Okay, great. All right. That was Ken Vanway from the Arts and Crafts Board at the Department of Interior. We're going to take a short little pause here, and we'll be back with our guests who are going to talk about getting some formals for this prom season coming up. So stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio, here on The Brew, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Mvskoke Radio. Gary Fife, Joho Jifkinos. We're being joined by one of our Mvskoke media reporters, Angel Ellis, and she has a pair of guests in here. It's prom season, and they're trying to find a way to help some of our young people attend those formal events.
So, Gary, I'm just curious, Gary, did you go to prom?
Yes, I did.
When was prom for you, Gary?
Let's see, 1968.
Oh my gosh! So was it like a fancy thing, or was it kind of just a hangout thing?
Oh no, it was fancy. In those days, you got dressed to the nines, as we used to say.
Yeah.
Of course, you'd go out and rent a tuxedo, and my date had a long white, light gown, and her hair done up, and the usual corsages and that stuff, and then, of course, pictures. Everyone
so all those prom traditions. So I went to prom in the 90s, and it was a little more low-key, which people dressed up, but we were all too cool for that thing, you know? We were just coming to hang out with friends, and we did a conga line. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about prom and its traditions, and I got some girls here who are going to help me kind of illuminate just how expensive and how hard it is to really kind of keep up with all that for your students today. It's kind of a real big drain on your budget. I have Mackenzie Jones and Savannah Chamberlain from the Department of Education and Training. I get those mixed up sometimes, so I'm glad I got that right. But can you tell us a little bit more about this new program that you guys have put together that's focused on prom?
Sure. So this year we are launching a formal wear donation drive. We work with 67 school districts in our jurisdiction, as well as we have a lot of programmings in the Department of Education and Training that go before K through 12 education and after. But we meet with a lot of Indian Ed directors and superintendents and principals and teachers from these K through 12 schools, and we hear that students are very often forced to make decisions between paying for things like prom dresses or college apps, and we're sort of putting these young people in these situations where they have to make choices that they have to choose between social events or academic things. And so we just thought, how could we lessen that burden? And we have such generous people who work at the nation and are citizens of the nation and friends of the community. So we wanted to reach out and see if we could get some formal wear donated, and that includes dresses and suits and accessories. And I'll have Savannah talk a little bit more about the process and how we're accepting donations.
Okay. Well, first, before we go totally into the process, I wanted to kind of dig into that big decision that kids are making and how that inspired you guys to make that leap, because you've talked a little bit about how some of the things you guys help students with is a long-term payoff. But this one's kind of a little bit different. How did you get there to that conclusion?
So in the Department of Education and Training, we have programs like Employment and Training and Higher Ed and Scholarship that help fund learning and college and tech schools and different programs like that. And that's sort of an investment in students, and it's long-term, and we see how that can help in the community. And then we see certain things that we work with K through 12. The STEP program and the NYCP program both work with designated high schools, but those are sort of sowing the seeds for really long-term change. And we have a lot of students who will benefit from those and are currently benefiting from those, but they are sort of working to shift paradigms on a large scale. And Savannah and I were just talking, and we said, okay, what can we do for these students who are in school right now? What can we do to show them that the nation cares about them and we want to help them? And we thought, what are some things that stress students out? And we do ACT prep, and we, through the JOM program, a lot of schools do tutoring, but we thought, what's something that maybe isn't really traditionally thought of, something that we could help with in K through 12? And we thought, prom is so expensive. The average person in America spends $1,000 on prom, from tickets to dresses to going out to dinner and all of these things. So we just really thought this would be a great way that we can sort of rally the resources we have. It's not costing the nation any money. It's just a way that we can use the generosity that we have and the connections that we have to help our students.
And you talk about the spending of prom. I mean, I had a son who just did prom. Couple $100, which we went really thrifty on that couple $100. And I remember you talked about the anxiety. Sometimes, like, these kids are like sitting there and their friends are really excited and looking at dresses or talking about where they're going to get their suits. And that student is just kind of like, I may not even be doing this. I know that was like that for me, because my friends were like a big, I guess, pull in helping me get over that mindset. Because if it had been up to me, I'd have been like, I'm way too cool for this. I was going to hide behind that, loner mentality and just blow it off. But it was really, looking back as an adult, it was a big social event with some really wonderful memories that, those almost last memories I had with those friends. So to miss out on that would have been, looking back, kind of a sad and tragic thing. And there's students out there having to make those choices right now. But like, can you dive into some of the expensive things that prom goes into a little bit? Like, we were talking out in the lobby about some of those just a minute ago. If you want to like kind of break it down.
Yeah, so from promposals, as we know, that's becoming a big thing. Mm-hmm. Now, promposals can range up to $1,000 alone.
And that, for our listeners who don't know what a promposal is, it's how you ask your date to prom, basically. It's the new kind of, I guess, social kind of experiment thing going on. You'll see the videos, you'll see the creative ideas that people have come up with, and they're kind of costly sometimes.
Right. And just not only that, but then getting the tickets. I know we've looked, and they can range up to about $300 alone just for a ticket.
And that's just for this one night of socializing and enjoying your friends. Right. $300 in tickets.
Yeah, one night for just enjoying your friends, and that's an individual at that. Mm-hmm. So if you're buying for a date, it also is double of that.
Right.
And then also prom dresses and suiting. That can be very costly. Yeah. It just all depends on where you go, how thrifty you are, and then accessories as well.
Yeah. So there's blocks of it, and then you, like, some people get their hair done, or guys go get that fresh haircut, and it just keeps racking up. So these students that you guys are working with, maybe you're going to talk about the process that you're going through to help maybe take a chunk of that away, so that they could kind of obtain those, things that might have been unobtainable for them.
Right, and a huge part of prom, when we look at the expenses, is the fact that it is one night. Mm-hmm. I think suits are a little easier. You might be able to keep a suit and wear it to a few other events, but I looked great in my prom dress, but I never wore it again because I was never, I never had a need as a 17, 18, 19-year-old for like a mermaid gown. It just was not appropriate for working at the YMCA.
Right.
So we think a lot about what can we do that will enable people to use dresses that maybe people have worn one time, or maybe they bought them and they never wore them, so that students don't have that burden where they want to participate in this social activity, but it's very difficult to justify when you're choosing between different things, spending hundreds of dollars, which is what a lot of these dresses are running for one night.
Yeah,
So,
and when they get into these upper years of high school, we're already getting really expensive to begin with. We have, Letterman jackets and senior pictures and graduation invitations, all those things. And then we talk about the population that we serve here and what are some of the, can you give us any examples that you see of our Mvskoke kids and how they're kind of coping with meeting ends to begin with, and then something as, it can seem when you're worried about, other things that might impact your life, maybe prom is kind of something that they just kind of go, that's for funsies, and I can't afford funsies right now.
So something that sort of sparked this idea in us, there's it's called a one-time extracurricular grant through the Department of Education that is up to $500, and some students, Mvskoke students, choose to use it to buy a class ring and senior photos and things like that. And other students choose and wait to use it to buy a laptop for college or things like that. But we hear a lot of times students say, oh, I wish I had saved it for college. I'm so happy I have senior pictures and a class ring and all these things, but I wish I had saved it for college.
So in those moments, our Mvskoke Creek kids are feeling that pressure to be just like their peers, to participate in all the things that their peers participate in. And sometimes they're forced to make those more adult decisions that really kind of would leave them out of those fun, just being a kid and fitting in with everybody else kind of, activities. So what are you guys doing, and what do people need to know about, and call out to help and ask them to participate? We got the air for you.
So what we are doing, we are going to have applications out for students to participate in on February 25th. We are still going to be taking donations up until March 1st. However, we are willing to still take them throughout the year.
And those donations are for a dress or a suit.
Accessories, that can be shoes, a nice clutch, like a purse, jewelry, bow ties, things like that.
The fancy stuff that you might wear to prom, homecoming,
exactly.
to a fancy dinner. Of all kinds of varieties, right? Sizes, shapes. We have kids all shapes and sizes.
Exactly.
And then, right now you guys said that you had about how many dresses?
About 20 right now. Okay. And we're still going to be having a couple come in today.
But you're kind of low on the suits, right?
We are low on the suits. That's one of the big things that we're having trouble with. So if anyone would like to donate some suits, that would be great.
And when are you looking to get your donations by so that you can kind of have a cutoff and know how many folks you can help this round?
So we're hoping to have them all by March 1st.
Okay.
But if anyone would like to donate after, they're more than welcome to.
So this is a program that you guys want to grow and just help more and more kids every year, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you talk about the suits and the dresses, can you talk a little bit about condition?
Yeah. So what we would like for them to be gently used. Now, if it has a small tear or anything in the dress or the suit, that's no worries. We can definitely take it and still fix it.
So minor imperfections aren't a big deal. So
Right.
Okay. And when the students are out there listening and wondering, oh, this might be something for me, how can I apply? What do they need to do?
So follow us on our social media. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then we will also have it on our webpage. Now the application will come up on the 25th of February.
Okay, so they need to download that application from, what's the website called again?
It's the mcn-nsn.gov. It's going to be on the Department of Education and Training's webpage.
Okay, so they can just download that, fill it out. Do they email it into you?
Yes, they'd email my email. The application will actually have all the information on where to send it and how to get it into us.
Okay, all those instructions. And just to point out, too, you mentioned that while you might be accepting an application, this is not necessarily approve your finances kind of issue or anything like that.
No, not at all. So the reason we're doing applications is really just so we make sure that we are able to match people with formal wear that will work for them. So we want to make sure that we have sizes that are appropriate and an inventory that are appropriate and large enough to account for everyone. So it'll be basically a first come, first serve. These applications will also get sent out to Indian Ed directors at all of our schools, so they'll be able to disseminate it further to our Mvskoke Creek students.
Okay, kind of like an inventory tool, more like.
Yes.
So if I have 20 girls apply and I have to make sure I have X amount of dresses, and so I need to let people know if I do have this in inventory or not, and that's what the application process is for. Okay, I'm really curious though. So Mackenzie, tell me a little bit about prom for you.
So I had a great prom. I made my own dress.
Oh, fancy.
I was a little seamstress. I still am. I went with my date, Shu Yang. We still talk.
Awesome.
And I just had a wonderful time. It was at, I believe it was at the San Diego Zoo. I'm originally from San Diego, so we had a wonderful time.
Awesome. Okay, so Savannah, tell me about yours.
So mine was pretty amazing as well. I'm not going to lie. I went with my date, Jesse Morales. We still talk. We're good friends to this day. And I went, it was just us because we hung out with different groups, but we all met up with a big group and did the whole pictures and everything like that. We had it at the Riverside Municipal Auditorium. I'm from Riverside, California, so we had it over there.
So we've got some lasting memories that have really kind of carried on even in later life.
I've been turning over a lot of memories as I hear this and said, my God, yes, that was true then. We should have had Liz come on. She's been to 4 of them.
4 proms? Wow. So she's an experienced prom goer. She'd probably have a lot to talk about.
And I think she wants to donate her dresses, too.
I think she has.
Yes, we have dresses from Liz.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I have to ask you now, I went to prom in 1968, so it shows you how ancient I am. It was really kind of a formal-looking thing. We almost had a top national band there, but we didn't. But everyone dressed to the all the way to the teeth. I mean, all the guys were in Texas, rented or not. I don't think anybody stuck any electrical tape on their pants to fake it, but it was a huge thing and pretty much the social event of the year. And it marked such an important part of our educational process. Like you go to school, you learn what you need from the teachers, but also that socialization process. So I was kind of wondering if that is still true. And what your opinions were. How would you describe how important a prom is these days?
I think at a lot of schools it really is like the social culmination of the year, or even the 4 years. Like I still have, I went to prom 40 years after Gary did, but I still have.
Ow.
I still have lasting memories, and I think of those times, and Savannah sort of touched on these moments with our friends, and it's a lot of times sort of the end of your senior year. If you move away, you don't see a lot of people, honestly, ever again, so yeah. I think it's still pretty important.
I went to prom with someone I haven't seen since prom, or since high school, really. He went off and joined the military. It was funny, a group of our friends, we went together, so the one guy that got stuck in our group got to go in hanging 3 or 4 ladies off of his arm. So he was our guy friend, and he had the top hat and cane, and I kind of dressed up more like a retro 50s pin curl kind of hairdo kind of thing, and it was a lot of fun. But I've kind of done a little bit of history research on what prom is and where it came from. And what I've discovered through a few articles that I've read is that it originated from, back in the day, there was a debutante kind of ball for the wealthy. That was kind of their coming out. We're adults now, and, here we are. Well, the middle class, who, were more of the working class folks, they didn't have the resources to put on these, super fancy balls and things like that. And so their answer to that same kind of noting of transition was the high school prom, and that's how we've seen it get into our schools, and our schools even took it as a measurement of social kind of teaching, to be the gentleman or the lady, and they were kind of, in that time when they first started doing it, it was kind of like that gentle skills kind of, introduction for these young adults who were kind of throwing off the, childhood and entering adulthood. So it's kind of interesting to see how that has morphed.
Any thoughts, Savannah? What was, is it that important to you? I mean...
Yeah, and just thinking of how it is now, the change, and how we have promposals and we have all these other, traditions. It's kind of interesting to know what it originally came from. Also knowing that it was to help the lower class, though, kind of have more of a ball. Kind of makes it a little bit more special to...
Yeah. So tell us about your promposal. I've heard a little bit about it, and I'm just fascinated by promposals because I didn't have this when I was in school. We were just kind of like, we're all pals and we're all going to go together in the same car kind of thing.
So because I'm from California, we went to Disneyland, and we both had Disneyland passes at the time. And so we just thought, oh, fun day at Disneyland. Well, one day we were right at the castle, and I was told to look over and right at the front of the castle, and I had like Peter Pan standing there holding a sign that said, "Will you go to prom with me?" And they're all pointing to it, and so that was my prom proposal, yeah.
So those are some pretty special memories, and we got to make sure that our Mvskoke kids aren't missing out on these kinds of things as they, grow up and look back on the things that they were, experiencing in school. Give us a rundown of what our donors need to do, because we were kind of getting towards that window of time. Prom's coming quick. If you have clothing that you want to donate, you have accessories, you have suits, fancy shoes that you're probably never going to wear again, what do they need to do?
So donations can be dropped off during normal working hours, 8 to 5 at the Department of Education and Training building in the Tribal Complex in Okmulgee. You are also free to reach out to us, and we can come pick up donations from people. We know a lot of people live pretty far out of Okmulgee, and we're still happy to take your donations. Can we plug our phone number?
Oh, sure.
Oh, okay. You can call me, this is Mackenzie, at 918-549-2963.
And 918-732-7743.
So all those contact information. If you have the clothes or you have that fancy dress, that fancy suit sitting in your closet that you don't want to wear again, or you think you probably won't be wearing again, get a hold of these gals and we'll put it to good use. I'm really fascinated about the part of this program that you talked about, that it was not a cost. What you're doing here is you're coordinating resources with everybody out there, and you're just putting it in touch with the people who need it. So what was the idea behind that? When you think of services and helping out people anymore, it's usually associated with a budget. But how did you guys kind of navigate that kind of terrain when you were sitting and planning this out? What was your key element to all of that?
So grant writing is a big part of what I do in the Department of Ed, so I spend a lot of time thinking about where money is coming from and where it's going to go. And a lot of times when I'm writing grants, I think about in-kind donations and people who are willing to give their time and their talent and help people out. And I think as Savannah and I were sort of talking about this, we realized we know people always want to help, and people will call the department asking, how can I help, how can I help? And a lot of times it's been financial. But then we thought, what other resources do people have? And they have their time to help us coordinate things like this. And they also have dresses that no one really wears more than once. And so we just thought, we'll put it out there and maybe we'll get a few and we can match it up with some students that we know really need it. But the response has been really positive, and people are saying, oh, my daughter's prom dresses are still in their closet and she's been out of college for 10 years. What can we do? So for us, we were really thinking about what are some resources that we can leverage that aren't financial.
And I'm thinking about some of the topics that we all discussed around the office is I've been out of school for 20 years. I'm man, I don't know if somebody wants to use my dress, but I wouldn't ever discount the fact that there's some zany kid out there who really likes retro clothing. So don't let that discourage you. Call them up and see if there's something that they can, use. I mean, is there any cutoff or anything? I had people from my class going as Dumb and Dumber with their really crazy orange and blue tuxedos. I mean, some of the wildest stuff, ruffled shirts, things I hadn't seen in my lifetime were coming out of the closet for prom. So it was kind of like the 90s too, and we were all just weird like about that stuff. We were partial rebels and then partial participants in this dressing up thing. But I think that people are really just going to kind of have to just throw it out there and see who might want it. And then there might be some seamstresses out there like you who might want to turn their dresses into something different, things like that. Can we kind of like dive into what you guys were kind of, thinking when you talk about like the fact that some of these might have like a little tear or something? You mentioned being a seamstress. Let's talk a little bit about that. Like you can kind of work on the clothes too.
Sure. So we just don't want anyone to feel discouraged by like a small tear. If it seems like it would be fixable, we're happy to take it, and we can also make that call. So if there's, we said gently used because we don't want things with like huge stains or anything, but we're willing to take care of some cleaning as long as it doesn't come like freshly worn to us. Like we know some people have had these in their closets for 5 or 6 years. I don't expect you to run it through a dry cleaner again. But we are, these are donations for really deserving students, so we want to make sure that what they get is quality and not throwaway, but I also feel like people understand that.
Sure.
So anything that we can fix, we will. And if you're sort of on the edge, if you don't know, feel free to donate it and we can figure it out. Just general like donation guidelines like you would for most things.
And don't forget though, you guys are looking for suits and accessories and the shoes and things like that. So one final plug on where they need to call. If they have any questions, you can call Mackenzie at 918-549-2963 or Savannah at 918-732-7743. And we got some announcements, don't we, Gary?
Right. So we want to thank our guests here for taking the time to come down and join us today. We appreciate the information, and we would encourage those who are kind of thinking about maybe requesting help to go ahead and do it. You will have a memory that you won't ever forget, particularly if you wear something weird.
Yeah. If you like I did. And
then people get the pictures and say, look what you did.
Yeah, my kids love those pictures. They give me a lot of grief about it.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to move on to our
one of my favorite topics, probably wild onion dinners.
Here we go.
All right. Love some wild onion dinners. It is the best time of the year. The Salt Creek Methodist Church is having an all-you-can-eat wild onion dinner on Saturday, March 2nd from 11 to 3. Adults, $12. All carryouts are $12. Kids, 10 and under, are $6, and that's going to take place at the Holdenville Indian Community Center, located at 224 East Poplar Street in Holdenville, Oklahoma. You can contact Dodie Barnett at 918-752-7959.
And Little Casetta, UMC, all you can eat wild onion dinner. That's March the 23rd. I love this time of year.
It's the best.
It's from 11 to 3, adults $10, children $7. And if you need directions or more information, call Karen King at 918-777-8242.
The Thalflaco United Methodist Church is having an all-you-can-eat wild onion dinner on March 16th. It's going to be located at the Thalflaco United Methodist Church from 1 to 5. Adults $10. Children 12 and under are $5. Children under 2 eat free. If only I could be 2 years old again. I could have all the wild onions I need. But for directions or more information, please call Beverly Parker at 918-346-0308.
Oh, God. Defambaji. Oh, boy. Okay, now this announcement is for the ladies. Come and be inspired, empowered, and shop till you drop. Food, music, fun, $5 entry fee. Vendors welcome. The Marketplace for Women at the Glenpool Conference Center, March 1st from noon to 8, March 2nd from 10 to 5. Contact 918-857-1240.
And you're going to want to save the date for the spring celebration. It's going to be happening March 19th. It's open to youth of all ages, 2 to 18, and their family. They're going to be providing you with lunch, traditional games, door prizes. There's going to be a photo booth, haircuts, stickball, inflatables, face painting, games, and more. More information will be coming soon, and if you have any questions, you can contact them at 918-732-7600.
Right, I think they're still waiting on a final approval for a location there, so
Okay.
I hope it's handy. Okay, now here's another bit of change for all you hockey fans. It's Tulsa Oilers Hat Trick this weekend at the BOK Center. 3 nights of action start this Friday night at 7:05 when the Oilers take on the Wichita Thunder. Then on Saturday at 7:05 and Sunday at 4:05, the Worcester Railers make their first ever visit to Tulsa. Stick around after the game Sunday and skate with the players. You can buy tickets today by phone or text at 918-632-7825 or online at tulsaoilers.com, and get ready for 3 days of exciting games with the Tulsa Oilers.
It almost looks like we could have wild onion dinner every weekend in March so
I'm
far.
ready,
So
yeah.
I'm pretty excited.
Bring it on. I wish Holdenville wasn't so far away from Glenville.
It's worth the drive. I've gone to that one. It's pretty good food.
That's all you can eat.
The Mvskoke Creek Nation language program is having its annual immersion camp. It's a week-long camp for students who have the desire to read, write, and speak the Mvskoke language. It's going to be taking place from June 10th through June 14th at the Sequoia State Park in Holbert, Oklahoma. Grade levels are 7th through 12th, and students cannot be 18 years of age prior to June 10th. Students must include a typed 200-word essay on why the Mvskoke language is important to them. There's no exceptions to that writing rule. Kind of bring out the pen and paper and get to thinking on why it's important. And they want you to send your applications and supporting documents to the Mvskoke language program at P.O. Box 580 in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, 74447, or via email to mlowe, L-O-W-E, at mcn-nsn.gov. The application deadline date is April 12th at 5 p.m. If you have any questions, you can give them a call at 918-732-7649.
Have you ever been interested in the Toastmasters Club and you want to inspire and motivate your team, your people? Challenge yourself with their proven education programs. The chapter is starting up here in Okmulgee. The officers and members of the Okmulgee Spillway Speakers Club invite you to join their first meeting Thursday, February 14th. That's tomorrow at 6 to 7 p.m. in the Harmony Building located at the First United Methodist Church here in Okmulgee at 302 South Seminole. So if you're interested, give them a call. Call 918-330-8501, Liz.
So can you name the Sergeant of Arms for the National Council?
Oh, no, you're going to beat me up on this one.
Oh, do you know how many ceremonial grounds there are today?
Here we go
Or
again.
what type of material that the ball for stickball is made out of? Well, if you don't, and you want to find some kids who do, you can go and check out the last date of Challenge Bowl, because those kids know it all. I mean, they are studied up and they are serious about Mvskoke Creek knowledge, and they're going to be having their last date on the February 15th, and that's going to be the elementary, and so they're going to be giving out awards for first place, second place, third place. And this year, I think they're saying that their first places are going to win the rings, because the ring trophies are important. But if you want to check that out, it's going to be happening at the Mvskoke Creek Nations College. And for more information, you can contact them at 918-549-2522.
Okay, real quick, Native Love Skate Party, Saturday the 14th, 4:30 to 6 at Skateland in Tulsa. Check it out. So you might need to get a waiver, so you might want to talk to those folks. All right, we're done. We're out of here.